And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Dan Peterson. Dan, thank you, sir, for taking some time to be with me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. Dan is the owner of Flip Switch Consulting, and what Dan does, I think it's really cool. Hyper local social media marketing for small businesses. And when I first got that, he got my eye or my ear, and I went, hyper local. What in the world is that? So we're going to dive into that pretty deep and find out how that can really help you grow your business. But as we get in there, Dan, tell me, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
So I come from a small business background. I grew up in a town of 4,500 people thereabouts, and my family, aunts, uncles, parents, cousins, they're all entrepreneurs, or most of them anyway. So I come from that background, and I've always, for the most part, either managed or operated some type of business before I ended up owning a couple different companies over the last 20-ish years. And so 13 years ago, roughly, as of the end of 2024 here, um, my original partner and I started this company to help small business owners. And he went back into farming, and I have sole control of the company now. But it was out of a love for small business owners, and it's growing now. We don't just work with small business owners. We have Fortune 500 clients. We have franchises. We've expanded quite a bit, but the passion is still there to help those small business owners. So that's kind of my background. It's for the listeners, if you've ever heard of a Ben Franklin store, that is what my family owned, and I lived in that store growing up, which is like a
Yeah.
precursor to Walmart. If you're not familiar with Ben Franklin, because I don't
Oh,
think there's hardly any around. There might be like one or two in the whole country now, but
maybe now, but I
um,
remember the S&H green stamps and all of that, right, from Ben Franklin. Gosh, yeah, we had one of
yeah,
those down, and wow,
yeah.
I haven't heard that name for a long time.
I know it's always fun to bring it up, and I really miss those. Or I'm glad I had the memories, but I miss that. Just I'd jump back there in a heartbeat. If I
Oh
could just
yeah,
go back in time and just come in, walk into that store one more time. That was a lot of fun. It was a really cool place to be brought up. I mean, I practically lived there. I was there every day. So with that being said, I saw the struggles, and then my family owned other businesses too. So when I started the company, it was designed to help those business owners that needed something that was affordable. And that's where we come in, because all these other agencies are charging so much that the small business owners really can't afford them. So,
right, absolutely. Well, we might talk about that too, but let's talk about this hyper local social media marketing. What in the world is that?
so when we say hyper local, what we really mean is people that are gonna, targeting the customers and the people that are going to walk in your door or do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is more focused on the brick and mortar types of businesses, the ones that need people to come in from the 5 or 10 mile radius and spend money with them.
Sure.
But we internally in the company, we have kind of a hyper local mindset, even if it comes to web sales, online sales, things that might be national or global in nature. We still have a hyper local approach. And what that means to us is targeting people in a certain demographic, a certain niche kind of cohort that we create for the client. So we come up with those specific buckets, if you will, of different types of customers to target. But for the purposes of this conversation, it really comes down to a hyper local thing, meaning people within a small radius around the business.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it takes me back to like my first client years ago when I started my company back in 2013. He was an automotive repair shop, right? And you could almost put
Hmm.
one of those mathematical compasses things, where you draw a circle and stick it on his thing. And he's like, about 10 to 15 miles from my I see he's like, that's where I get 85% of my business.
That's it.
Hyper
Well, especially
local.
with, yeah, that's exactly right. Especially with a lot of companies, there's a lot of competition out there. People aren't going to drive past 10 other businesses like yours to get to yours, unless you've really built a really heck of a business and you got a lot of good rapport with people. But in general, it's really about building that reputation and that trust within a small radius and saturating that. We call it our backyard. Build out,
Mm,
saturate your backyard before you start worrying about expanding.
yeah. Well, that are so good. We might want to camp there just a minute because that's great marketing right there. As I work
Hmm.
with a lot of small and medium sized businesses, and they all have this. They've bought into the myth that I have to be everywhere.
Mm.
And I continually tell them, you probably don't have the money to be everywhere. Well, do you, I mean, do you hear that? What do you think about that?
We do, especially when it comes to like platforms. So the field that a business owner needs to be on every platform. So when you say everywhere in the digital world, I would take that as like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, so on.
Dot, dot, dot.
And it gets to a point where the average business owner is not doing a good job with one or two of those, let
Right.
alone if you start doing four, five, six, seven. So we really focus on trying to help them dial that in and figure out where their audience is. I mean, where is your customer base? What age group are they? Where are they spending their time when they're online? And then dominating that kind of
Yeah.
that vertical, if you will.
Yeah. I think it's such a better approach for small businesses and for medium-sized businesses too. Because
It's true.
we don't have we don't have the time, we don't have the money, but when you become a dominant force or a dominant voice to your little audience, and I'd love to talk about that too, because if you're hyper targeting, many business owners, well, I've got to reach everybody, right? I need to reach 5,000, 25,000, 50,000 people. And I'm like,
Right.
you know, there might be a different way. What are your thoughts around that when it comes to hyper?
Yeah, I mean, I would really recommend, especially if it's a smaller business that has a brick and mortar that's in a certain town or whatever, or like here where I'm at, Chicagoland, you've got suburbs that bump up against each other. So you might market to yours and one or two or three different suburbs in the area. But outside of that, I mean, you're really spreading your marketing dollars thin.
Mhm.
And even if you're not spending money on paid ads, if everything's organic, you're still kind of marketing to a larger audience than you probably need to, at least starting out. And that's what we talk about. We say, try to focus on capturing as much of that business in your backyard within maybe a 1 or 2 mile radius. And then if you
Yeah,
feel you've saturated that, move out 3 or 4 miles and then move out again. But
yeah,
um, to answer your question even better, I think it really comes down to knowing, like I said, which platforms your audience is on, and then creating content that resonates with that specific audience on one or two or three platforms: Facebook,
right.
Instagram. If you're B2B, LinkedIn. We're trying to really drill deeper and build more meaningful relationships in those instead of going wide and trying to come up with a tiny piece of every platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned this from Roy Williams years ago. I want to be a household name.
Yeah, there
I
you
want
go.
to be, it's kind of like Ben Franklin, right? When you said that, I immediately came to, it's like, yeah, why don't we do that? Well, I was talking to somebody the other day in one of my coaching programs, and we were talking about a car dealership in Texas, Sewell Cadillac. It used to be Sewell Cadillac, now it's Sewell everything, right? And
Hmm.
they've been around for so long and done such a great job of marketing. But he said, and this guy lived in Dallas. He's like, you know what? All their advertising, they don't advertise Sewell Audi or Sewell Cadillac. I drive a Sewell, and it doesn't matter the brand because they've dominated over decades, right? They've grown from one dealership to multiples, but it's
Hmm.
that same concept of dominating a small audience and then letting that audience grow organically. You'll get referrals, and then your business grows, and you can go get another audience or another backyard or a field. Right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a couple ways you can look at it. You can either try to be something to everybody, right? And really try to appeal to the masses, or you can build brand within a certain niche kind of group. And I think that there's, um, how do I put it? I think that there's a plus and a minus to both of those. I think for certain brands and certain industries, you need to kind of appeal to the masses,
Mm-hmm.
at least to a certain degree, but still within a smaller radius starting out. I still think, even for like a car dealership or somebody like that, which we have, I mean, 50 of them around here, you can throw a rock and hit a car dealership where I'm
Right.
at.
That's true.
So it becomes for them, very territorial in nature. And so they need to kind of appeal to potentially anybody, unless they're, for example, maybe a luxury car brand. So if you're
Right.
only selling Porsches and
Yeah.
whatever. We have a lot of Maserati dealerships, or a lot of people that buy Maseratis around here for some
Yeah.
reason. So if you're trying to aim at that demographic, then no, it doesn't have to be such a wide approach. It should be a little narrower, and your targeting should speak to a higher level of buyer that has a certain income level and so on. But in general, for the average business, you can either go narrow and really try to drill deep within that niche group, or you go wide and try to kind of build brand.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a middle ground too.
Right.
It really depends on the type of content you put out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to get into that rabbit hole or not,
Well,
but we
a
certainly
little bit,
could.
because what I want to get into is what are the struggles that you find business owners are having before they come to you, right? When they're about ready to reach out, what are some of the struggles? And I'm sure content's one of them, right?
Oh, for sure. It's I always say we sell time and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the people that know how to do it, they don't have time. And for the people that think they know how to do it, they probably still aren't doing as well as they could. And then
Right.
there's just a lot of business owners that don't know what they're doing. People, I'm 45 years old and I'm a dinosaur when it comes to social media, let alone the average 50, 60-year-old business owner that's out there that certainly didn't come with any of this 20 years ago when they, or 30 or 40 years ago when they started their business. So yeah, I think that we handle a variety of clients in different walks of their business life, and each one has a slightly different problem. But most of the problems can be probably boiled down to two or three different categories, which is not knowing what to do. And when I say that, that's a broad statement, but I mean, like, where do I post? How often do I post? What kind of content? Who wants to see it? What if they don't like it? That kind of what should I do component. And then
Mm-hmm.
another component is the time and the energy that it takes to create good content. And we call it stopping the scroll, because everybody's scrolling on their phones all the time. How do you stop the scroll? How do you get that attention?
Yeah.
And that comes down to the creative aspect of it. So you have to have this creative part going 100% all the time. We have a saying, it's actually kind of our unofficial tagline at Flip Switch is think social first. So
Mm-hmm.
it's everything in life, everything in your day to day, your business life, your personal life, everything can be social media content. So how do you then, if you have that mindset, how do you then create content at scale for your business? How do you put out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 posts a day across different platforms and 5 to 10 stories a day? And how do you keep that
Yeah.
rolling along? And that's where we kind of help direct and channel that into certain ways and methods and means.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Talk about how you work. Who should call you right after this,
Mhm.
and then what's the initial process? I guess how do you work on an annual basis, a 6 month? I mean, what's it kind of look like, or is there a general?
Yeah, there's a pretty general answer to that. So we have two sides to the business. One is we do it for you. So we handle pretty much all of your marketing, whatever that means. It could mean anything from web design and print stuff, print design, if that's still something, because there are a few businesses that still should be doing that, believe it or not.
Absolutely.
Not many, but there's still a few. But it's got to be done right, and it needs to be uh, in conjunction with your other marketing efforts, and it needs to stop the scroll in a paper fashion. In other words, when you're
Mhm.
scrolling through your mail, how do you get
Right.
that person to actually pay attention to that piece? And then there's of course, the everything else, the digital side. But on that side, we do it for you. So take it off your plate. Then the second part of our business is the coaching element, where we meet with you usually once a month. We come up with a plan, a blueprint, you execute it for that month. And then the next month we revisit it, what worked, what didn't, this, that, and the other, create a new blueprint, you execute that for the month, and so on and so forth, month to month. And that one is actually the one that's probably taken off the most in the last year.
Mm.
And I called this about 6 years ago now. I told my wife, I said, in 5 years, so that would put us back in about 2023, which is accurate. I said, in 5 years, we are going to have to change some of the method of how Flip Switch operates, because we're going to have the younger generation who are their teens and early 20s. They're now going to be in their early to mid, even late 20s, and they're going to be in their boss's ear saying, hey, I can do social media for you, just add it to my plate or pay me extra or whatever.
Right.
Problem is none of that generation, for the most part, has owned a business, operated a business, marketed for a business. They've run their own social media, and they're great at, posting what they ate that day and hanging
Right.
out at the beach, but they have not marketed for a business. So it's a lot different. So, but I
Yeah.
saw it coming. I knew that that's where we would be. So sure enough, started about last year, the coaching thing really kicked off full blow. And it's doing really well.
That's
So the
good.
type of the type of business that needs this varies. it could be anybody that, I mean, we've worked with every single type of industry there is, except for banks, pretty much. And that's just because the regulation's more of a pain than I want to deal with. But everything's got to go through compliance.
That's right.
But as far as that goes, every other industry is on the table for, up for grabs. And most of them are the ones that want to expand upon what they're already doing.
Hmm.
So if you're already doing a good job at social media or any type of marketing, we can pour gas on that and take it to another level. If you're not doing a good job, then obviously you need some help and we can take over from there. So it's kind of a customized concierge-ish service for whoever
Hmm.
needs it in whatever niche they're in.
Yeah. Do you find people hop into the coaching thing for a few months and then they realize, you know what, this is cool, but I really don't like it, or I don't have the time that I thought I had, and can you just take it over for me? Is that kind of a transition, or does that not happen?
It does happen. Probably a third of the time, I
I
would
was gonna
say.
say, yeah. That
They
would
get
be my
about,
guess.
yeah, about 3 to 6 months in. We typically start with 6 months because that
Yeah.
gives everybody enough time to ramp up, see
Right.
results or not, or whatever. So yeah, you're you're on to something there. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. It's not a loss leader for us by any means or anything like that. It's not why
Right.
we did it,
Right.
but it is a transition that a lot of people do. And then we have other ones that go the other way, believe it or not. So we have some that are full service, and then they
Mm.
want to hire somebody internally to do the marketing, but they want us to stay on top of them and basically manage it almost like a
Okay.
project manager or a consultant.
There you
So
go.
then there's that. So it tosses back and forth.
Sure.
I will say that I think for most businesses, the coaching, if they've got a good person internally,
Yeah.
the coaching element is lights out better than hiring us for full service
Yeah.
because you can't beat having somebody inside doing your marketing if they're doing a good job. That's the
Right.
key though. And we see a lot
Right.
of people that don't, and they're
Well, they
just
don't.
sucking
Yeah.
up a paycheck.
That they are, yeah, and they're out trying to hire different agencies, and they go through the agency mill, is what I call it, right? We do
Hmm.
this one for a year, then we switch. And it's like, oh, would you stop it? Find somebody like Dan that you can just stick with, and has. I love the fact that you can go back and forth or something, because if
Hmm.
you found somebody that you could train and have some accountability and a plan, uh, they could do it, right? But there are a
Sure.
lot of people like me. I don't want to do it. I'd want to hire
Yeah.
Dan. Say, would you take care of it? And then we meet together, and you build a framework, you build a structure, you build a system. You go, okay, where are you going? Yeah, you probably don't need to be on 8 different social media platforms. Let's find two, maybe three. I
Yeah.
don't know
Two
what
or
what
three.
works. And then let's talk about content and what does that look like, and how do we do it consistently over time? And that's where I see most business owners really failing. They
Yeah.
start something, and 4 weeks later, they're like, I got to go over here and do this now. And then yeah, you
You're
got to be consistent, right?
dead on. Yep, that is exactly right. Our first client from almost 13 years ago is still a client.
Hmm.
They've been with us and they almost, here's a kind of funny story, not funny, but true. They almost went out of business
Hmm.
back in the day. They had a lot of struggles. It was small mom and pop cafe type of place. But they had this huge benefit of being right off of the interstate in a small town, but that exit right there, so we kind of turned them into almost like a destination restaurant or
Right,
destination breakfast coffee spot or whatever you want to call it, little cafe. And here they are all these years later. But they never were able to hire outside of their family for,
mm,
because they couldn't grow. They didn't have enough
right,
sales coming in to be able to grow externally. So it all had to be people, probably half of them working for peanuts or free.
right.
Just how family stuff is.
That's
So
right.
that's what they were doing. And then I'll never forget after being with us for a little while, they were able to hire their first like high school student external from the family.
Yeah,
And that was a big moment for them. And
yeah,
that sticks with me. That's something that I don't feel like a lot of agencies would even pay attention to. And I don't feel like
hmm,
any CEO or founder or whatever you want to call me of an agency would pay attention to it or remember it. And I
right.
remember that like it was yesterday. So it's cool to be able to help those business owners and watch them progress. But the reason I brought up them being our first client ever and still being with us is we do a good job of not we do a good job so you don't need to switch agencies. You don't need to
Right.
bounce back and forth. And that's something that we're very proud of course. But there is a lot of that in this industry. A lot of, we're dealing with it with a couple clients right now that
Yeah,
are trying to get out of their contract to come to us. And it's
right.
like, hopefully they stick with
It's
us and don't try to go back,
That's right. Yeah. Because you
but
just, it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And it's just like, okay, let's
mhm,
start all over again. It's like, well, why? Why don't we just work it out and figure it out? So,
that's right.
um, that's cool. How do, you and I, I think we could talk for a long time because I've got all kinds of questions and thoughts, but I think probably the most profitable thing is to say, how do people get a hold of you? Because I know people in my audience struggle with this. They don't want to
Mhm.
do it, or they have somebody who's not doing it well, but you might be able to coach them up a little bit and put some frameworks around. How does somebody like get in touch with you just to start having a dialogue, or find some content from you and say, okay, who are you? Where do they go?
Yeah. So you can find Flip Switch pretty much anywhere. There is another company out there called Flip Switch that came up, I think, just after we did, but they're not a marketing company. They do something totally different. But Flip Switch social media, Flip Switch Consulting Group, it's the same company, depending on where you look. Um, all the social channels, and of course, our website is flipswitchsocialmedia.com or flipswitchconsultinggroup.com. They'll take you to the
Okay,
same spot. So
excellent.
if you just Google Flip Switch, it's an orange and blue logo. You'll find us, and you can contact me or my team. Let me ask you or say one thing though. This is a
Yeah,
really good takeaway. I really, when I do these shows, I really like to give some kind of like really tangible thing or multiple
yeah,
times. One thing that I could tell any business owner out there that's whether they're looking to hire out or they're trying to do it internally is to not sell your service or your product and not think of yourself as whatever that is. If you're a store, a restaurant, a dentist, a plumber, I don't care what you do, you have to be a marketing company that also does whatever you do. So if you're a
yeah,
plumbing company, no, you're not. You're a marketing agency that happens to do plumbing. If you're a retail store, no, you're not. You're a marketing agency that happens to sell whatever you sell in the store. And if you have that mindset as a business owner, you will change the game for your business. It totally flips everything on its head. Everything is looked at through the marketing lens, and then the sales come because of that versus
right.
trying to always sell something and not marketing it. You
That's
can't do
right.
both most of the time. One has to come before the other. So if you do a good job marketing, then the sales will come. But that's the
Uh,
best advice that I've probably ever given any businesses. And the ones that we see do it, the ones that actually take it to heart and really turn in. I mean, we've seen people have like 8 different employees that become a team and they just start, I mean, just doing social media like it's their job, treating it
yeah,
literally like that's their only job, while they're of course doing whatever they're really supposed to be doing. But when they have that mindset, those businesses have blown up.
yeah.
We've seen it time and time again. So I don't pat myself on the back, but it is probably the best advice that I could possibly give a business owner.
Absolutely, I will concur 100%. And that's how you grow your business, is be a great marketing company that does plumbing or car or
Or
whatever you
whatever
do.
else.
You've got to
That's
think
right.
marketing first, and as Dan said, think social first. So why don't you guys reach out to Dan Peterson, Flip Switch Consulting? I'll have that in the show notes, and just talk to him, see what he can do, whether it's building the internal team, coaching you to do it, or whether they're going to do it for you. You've heard a lot here. Go back and listen to this episode because he dropped 2 or 3 nuggets that you really need to hear as well. But then reach out to him and see how he can help you with some hyper local targeting and to really grow your business long term. Dan, man, thanks for being my guest today. Thanks for doing what you do for small businesses. It is truly needed.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And I hope we can cross paths again.
Sounds great, brother. Thanks for listening to Experts Speak. Tune in again next week for another great episode. Take care. God bless.